Karbala, ay Karbala, ay Karbala, ay Karbala.
यासिर मुसलमान के प्यारे हैं हुसैन, चरखे नौए बशर के तारे हैं हुसैन। इंसान को बेदार तो हो लेने दो, हर कौम पुकारेगी हमारे हैं हुसैन।
Welcome back. Today, as you know, we're Ashura, the 10th day of Muharram, the first month of the Islamic calendar. It is a day we need to understand, we need to revere, and we need to understand more and more and also inculcate the traditions and the philosophy of what it stands for and the sacrifices that Hazrat Imam Hussain Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu made at that time along with his 72 family members. I'll quote the words of Maulana Muhammad Ali Johar, who said, "In the murder of Hussain lies the death of Yazid, for Islam resurrects after every Karbala." In the second half of this special transmission, we've been joined by two other very eminent guests. Let me introduce them to you one by one. We'll try to understand more of what Hussainiat stands for, of what social injustice he stood for, of whether what principles he inculcated at that time still reverberate with the Muslims of this generation. Our first guest is Professor Dr. Ahmad. You're a religious scholar and a very revered one at that. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have come here. You're also the Vice Chancellor of the University. Our second guest is Professor Dr. Zia Haq. You're the DG of the Islamic Research Institute. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us as well. Let's begin with Anisa. Anisa, we in the first half of this transmission tonight talked about the philosophy of Hussainiyat, the sacrifice that Hazrat Imam Hussain made along with his family members to make people understand the core values that he stood for when he stood against injustice, when he stood against cruelty, when he stood against wrong political principles of that time. When we go through this whole month of Muharram, every year, first 10 days or the first 30 days or even beyond that, whether we fast or we don't, whether we stay silent or we don't, whether we pray or we don't, have we really imbibed, inculcated through the generations of what Hazrat Imam Hussain stood for so many years ago?
Thank you very much. I think like many other communities of the world, we Muslims have become a victim of ritualization, and you will find that there is hardly one world religion where there are no certain festivals which become central activity of those faiths. They make long pilgrimages, they travel thousands of miles, they paint their bodies, they do all kind of rituals. But what you said in the beginning quite often is missed in all those celebrations and festivities. Same with us. We for 10 days mourn and do not like to have a word of music on our so-called very enlightened liberal media. But after those 10 days, we believe all that music which is haram becomes halal. Similarly, in these 10 days, we believe that we must have seriousness and do acts of charity, start giving people fresh drinks on streets, give them water, give them food. But after 10 days, as if it was a kind of 10 days vacation to enjoy people with some water and food, but then no more for that vacation. So we have made it a festival. The word you used in the beginning was, what is its philosophy? I think several issues can be raised. To begin with, I believe that Imam Hussain, when he felt that there is a move towards a departure from the well authentic Islamic concept of a state, he felt that there is a departure taking place and it might lead to ultimate separation between state and religion. The Roman, the Greek, and most of the world even today, they feel proud on this separation. Imam Sahib felt that if what took place in the form of Yazid's succession to throne is allowed, then we'll end up ultimately in two poles, a pole of spirituality and a pole of secularity, which is contrary against Islamic basic principle. Islam claims its Deen al-Haq. Islam claims its one integrated whole, and he felt it. Secondly, he felt that if on this occasion we don't check this transition from the Khilafah structure of a state to a monarchical state, then he will be failing in his responsibility. It's difficult to understand for us today, but
what I also want to understand is, why is it difficult for us to understand?
Yeah, because I and you and most of the people are born in a cultural tradition. In our cultural tradition, whether we are in the so-called Muslim world or West, certain things come to us in our blood. Among those is, this is my deen, this is my dunya. This is secular, this is religious.
True.
Islam does not accept it. Islam means, Tawheed means, all space has to be controlled by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will and desire. There is no space which is secular, no space sacred. A hadith sahih says, Allah has made this whole earth masjid for you. That means there is no such thing as parliament for making false promises and masjid for making long prayers. No such thing. Islam doesn't want. So I was saying that first threat which he felt was, this will take place. Secondly, he felt that if at this point there is no speak up, then who will speak up? The point was not that with Yazid people stopped making prayer, stopped making Hajj, stopped paying zakat, stopped giving people food to eat. No, all these things were there. Then what was missing? What was missing was the core of state was being shaken. State Islam was founded on the principle of Khilafah or Imama. Khilafah or Imama means that office which enjoys public vote, therefore popular election, which enjoys personal status as muttaqi person, taqwa, which enjoys trust or amana, which enjoys scholarship in Islam. Because a head of a state, of Islamic state, if he does not know whether the Quran has 30 paras or 40 paras, how can that person be called a responsible authority in a state? Similarly, the person, whoever is going to, or this system that is going to work, should be accountable based on shura. On the other hand, if you move to monarchy or hereditary succession, whether it is in political realm or spiritual realm, no difference. Again, my point might strike some people. What I am saying is, hereditary principle in the so-called secularity as well as spirituality has no place, because prophets have no successors in prophethood and khulafa have no successor in political realm. They are independent. Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman, not kith and kin, but they are independent persons in their own right. So the idea was that this concept of shura, consultation, not monarchical will. The idea was that not hereditary succession, that after a father, a daughter or a son, or a father, son-in-law becomes head of a state. All these concepts were going to come. The beginning was with this one single event, and therefore a wise person should speculate, visualize. If this thing is allowed, then we are opening a door for succession, and consequently you have the Umayyads, the Abbasis, the Fatimis, the Usmanlis, the Zangis, the Mughal, whatever you call them, so many dynasties. All of them took their authority on the concept that there are two things. One is Khilafah, one is Imara. Therefore, Amir is so and so. Khalifa, for just decoration purposes, a person who claims to be coming from the family, which again is contrary principle. Islam never allowed Khilafah based on succession. Yet, for the Usmanlis and many others, for centuries, what I am saying is that our history needs to be looked critically.
All right.
We have been either possessed by a feeling of emotional attachment manifested in festivities, or complete negation of basic Islamic principles on which Islam was established by the Prophet, peace be upon him, and on which Khulafa Rashidun, Hazrat Ali, Hazrat Usman, Hazrat Umar, Hazrat Abu Bakr, all of them, they all practiced that. When Hazrat Ali was on his deathbed, and people came and said, "Sir, do you allow us to take Hassan as your successor?" His answer was, "I cannot do that. Go to masjid, let people elect a person."
And that decision of the people is very important. If they so decide, that is how this should happen. I mean, there are a lot of different aspects to it all. There's a lot of different aspects to what also Karbala stood for at that time and stands for even now. How much do we understand, sir, in today's days and time, Professor Zia Sahab, the importance of Karbala in Islam?
As Professor Anis Sahab has elaborated, actually this event, it has various dimensions. It has historical dimensions, it has political dimensions, and of course it has religious dimensions. Today, what happened in the history, it has gone. Now the issue is, what is for us today that historical event? That historical event for today has many challenges as well as opportunities. First of all, I would like to mention few opportunities. The struggle of Imam Hussain and his family and his companions, it was to stand for the constitutionalism, to stand for the core values that were established by Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his rightly guided caliphs. So he and his companion and his family, they had not any difficulty or any challenge in their personal life. They were offered to live a peaceful but prosperous life, but they decided to stand because it was their responsibility that we should stand for the core values and for the constitutionalism that was established during the period of Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and rightly guided caliph. So if they would have not standed, then there might have been opportunism always in the Muslim world. So their stand was actually lesson for us that we have to stand to protect the core values, and we have not let opportunism to be promoted in the society. Because if opportunism is promoted in the society, then no one will ready for sacrificing to the core values. And we have to protect the core values, we have to protect the norms, and we have to protect our identity, even if we have to sacrifice. The Islamic tradition of sacrification for a noble cause is emerging from this historical event. And this is continue. This, I can say, any opportunity that is emerging from that historical event. This is another question, whether our actions are today in accordance with that or not. And
Or
Professor
whether we
Dr.
do understand what all of that has stood for.
Yeah, and another thing is that there are many challenges that emerge from that. We have to think, if this event was not in our history, how much we would have been united, and how much different Muslim world have been today. First of all, we need to learn that sectarianism, divide, and oppression, that is rooted the division from that event. It shouldn't be removed. It should be deleted from our past, from our present culture. We have to reconstruct our culture on the basis of the core values against this revolution was, this struggle was. And secondly, as Professor Dr. Ahmad has mentioned, it is not a celebrated celebration. It should be a lesson that should be learned. Now, if on this month, particularly on the events that were there, if we are going to promote further sectarianism in our society, further divide in our society, then it means that we have not learned anything from that event. I think we needed to learn from the event, and the learning is that divide will be dangerous for the society, for the nation, and for the country. Pakistan is facing a lot of challenges presently, and we can come out from these challenges if we are united. If we will continue to divide, then this division will detach us not only from our core values, but it will weaken us, and the future of the nation would not be safe. So therefore, it is important for us that we should today we should commit ourselves that we will not further divide our nation, but we will move towards the unity of the nation, and differences needed to be changed into diversity.
I mean, it goes beyond the nation, I feel, Jawahar Sahib. It goes beyond even a certain country or beyond a region. It is the whole ummah. It is not only the whole Muslim ummah, but it is the whole humanity in general. And Hussainiat, or what Hazrat Imam Hussain taught us through his ultimate sacrifice, through how his family sacrificed, of course, the cries of Zainab, the cries of Ruqayya, the blood of Hussain. This is not just, there is not just one element or one side to it. It is multidimensional. There are so many different elements that we need to decipher, that we need to understand, that we need to properly go through and inculcate this in our own lives, because until and unless we do not do so, we will always remain segregated. This is what my general point
your point of view is well taken. I agree with you, but I am talking about the perspective of Pakistan.
All right.
Because just before the start of MOHRRAM, we invited the leading ulama from all schools of thought in our university. Shia, Sunni, all ulama, they were there, and we agreed. First of all, they were agreed all on Paigam-e-Pakistan, that's the national narrative, and this issue of sectarianism was also addressed in that issue. And secondly, there was a commitment from the both sides of the ulama that we will move in this month peacefully, and we will remember the sacrifications of Hazrat Imam Hussain, but we will not let this event to use for further division of the society. So this is what I am intending to inform you. Otherwise, this issue, this historical sacrification is cross-cultural.
That is true.
Even it is
global.
honored by
global,
other
but
faiths.
it needs to be understood globally as well. Dr. Anis, the journey from Makkah to Kufa, what happened in Karbala, all the sacrifices, the people not allowed to even drink water, denied water, and then ultimately they die, children dying, and despite that, Hazrat Imam Hussain stood for his principles, stood for his integrity, stood for all that he wanted to portray to people who were around him, people who would ultimately get to know, and also the future generations. It was not a message just for people of that era. This was and still is a message for people of this era and for our future generations as well. When we I wouldn't say rejoice or celebrate, when we mourn these 10 days of Muharram, and then we forget what they stood for, as we do go through the 1 month of Ramzan, and after that we have 11 months where most of us do not follow the basic principles of Islam. What needs to be done, sir, in your point of view, for people to really understand the core principles of what Hazrat Imam Hussain stood for?
Yeah, Jazakallah. You see, three things very simple. First, I think we have to look into our education system, where we have to introduce that subject matter which creates not only love and respect for the Prophet, for his ashab, for those who are luminaries who sacrifice their lives, but at the same time we need to come out of symbols. Things have become symbolic.
That is
not
so
beyond
true and very relevant.
Not
Yes.
beyond that. Which means if Hazrat Hussain and his family faced such hardships which are very much depressing for anyone, then do we have presently any concern for the source of water to be used properly and provided to people in our own country? What kind of water they are using? Dusty, muddy, full of microbes. Then symbol of tyranny, not one, many. What are we doing against them? The event was used very correctly by Imam Khomeini when he created the replaying, or Karabla as he called it, in the whole struggle against Shah. Shah was presented as symbol of tyranny, and those who call themselves young Iranians, they thought that they are liberators from that tyranny, and very well received by people. But today, don't we have tyrants who are trying to tear up the Muslim world? Tyrants who are trying to divide us? Tyrants who are thinking to create all those idols of sectarianism towards which Dr. Zia pointed out. What was done by a so-called unipolar power in Iraq when it tried to bring a clash between the Shia and Sunni population of Iraq? And what's happening today? If there are today some countries of the world supporting those fighters who claim to belong to one sect or the other, then this has to be addressed. Unfortunately, because of our sensitivities, we believe that media should play a neutral role. Ulama should just come in conferences, pass resolution, sign agreement, join their hands and have a photograph session, not beyond that. I think we have to address our history critically and try to find out what are the points that bring us together. Among those is Imam Hussein's sacrifice and conduct. Among those is Hazrat Ali's decisions he took place during his regime rule. Rawaz Qalaji, a very famous faqih and scholar, I have known him personally, has volumes of fiqh literature in which he has tried to collect all fatwa of Imam Ali, of Imam Abu Bakr, Umar, Abdullah ibn Masud, and so on and so forth. If you compare those, you will find that decision made by Hazrat Umar and Ali are no different at all. Yet we think that one is leader of one group, other of the other. This should be addressed publicly, frankly. Why these biases? I am not aware of any so-called Sunni in the Muslim world who does not respect as much Hazrat Hussain as our Shia brothers do. But why we assume it's their time? They should be given projection. They should come and talk, and not Sunni scholars.
It is the projection of all communities, all sects.
It is a common cause. Yet, as he was saying, we have built it into sectarianism. Even his personality has become sectarian. Though it is never. Hazrat Ali is not a hero of one group or the other. He is hero of all Muslims. Same Hazrat Umar and Usman and Abu Bakr. We don't differentiate. Therefore, what needs to be done is through educational process, equal emphasis, without any biased views, and coming up with history which is above any sectarian approaches. Even our history is written with human perspectives, and we cannot avoid that. But today we are in a better position. We can put all of them in front of us and see where they have some biases which need to be corrected with the other sources of. Secondly, I believe that media has to play an important role. Media should bring
Highlight
concept of harmony. When Qaid-e-Azam was asked, "Sir, are you Shia or Sunni?" His answer was, "I am Muslim." And that means the father of nation wanted this country to be united on one single faith, Islam, irrespective of whether a person is Shia or Sunni. This aspect has to be inculcated from home, from education, from media. At the same time, I believe that we have to rewrite our history, and rewrite that with very responsible attitude, not coloring with political affiliations or with secularism, but looking into the interests of Ummah. In that respect, our Muhaddisun have a remarkable tradition that they even mention a report which in their criteria is slightly less acceptable, but they do it at the same time put a note. Based on this criteria, this thing is that level. I think this is the historical approach we must take. Does not mean deny reports which may be exaggerated, put them there, have a benchmark, indicate indeed this took place, but this much is superfluous, this much is the core. That makes history scientific, impartial and rational,
and
that's what we need.
That is very important. Now, you're part, Professor Zia-ul-Haq Sahab, of the Islamic Research Institute. We talked about Paygam-e-Pakistan. That was also a very important coming together of the different scholars of different sects and agreeing on different facets of the religion and agreeing on the basic principles that Islam stands for. Hazrat Imam Hussain also stood for the very same principles that Islam stood for. When we talk about education, as Professor Nisa talks about, when you talk about media of rewriting history, how much of that has actually been put into place in countries such as Pakistan and other Islamic countries, and how much is lacking for this basic understanding to come amongst the general public of any country, including that of Pakistan?
Lot of is lacking actually, and what Professor Saab has suggested, we took it into consideration in Paygam-e-Pakistan. It was decided and it was recommended by the leadership of all the sects that jurisprudential differences, it is not for the common person. Common people should be provided understanding of the faith which should helpful for them to have a good, faithful, religious, happy life. As far as differences of opinion and different interpretation, historical events, it should be dealt with a knowledge that is also part and parcel of Islamic tradition. It is ethics of disagreement. Unfortunately, we are promoting presently differences without teaching ethics of disagreement. Ethics of disagreement that are part of Islamic tradition are nowhere in our curriculum. And in fact, in the first 3-4 centuries of Islam, the Islamic culture in every aspect of life, whether it was Islamic law, it was hadith, it was interpretations of the Quran, or it was Islamic science, all these knowledge and the disciplines were emerged on the basis of ethics of disagreement. And core value of these ethics of disagreement is the tolerance, respect for others' opinion. They were listening others' opinion and they were giving their own opinion. We took this issue in very seriously in the Paigam-e-Pakistan, and ulama they agreed that these religious institutions and religious leadership, they will not use historical differences for the division of the society, but they will play their role to unite the society. And it was agreed, and some government institutions are also working on that, that now such type of religious ceremonies will be addressed by the ulama of all schools of thought. And Shia ulama, they assured the religious leadership of Pakistan that we will take care of all the majalis, and there would not be any hate speech during the majalis. And the Sunni ulama, they declared openly that we will play our role to protect the majalis, because many things in the majalis and the processions during the Muharram, they are part and parcel of our culture, cultural tradition. This cultural tradition is Pakistani cultural tradition. Yeah, it is a Muslim cultural tradition. It is not belonging to any particular sect. And another thing, it was agreed, as Professor Sahab has mentioned, that these are heroes of the Muslims. These are not the heroes of a particular sect. Therefore, the religious leadership has to move forward. And I'm happy to report here that Pakistani religious leadership is realizing, and our university, our institute, we are moving towards uniting some of the, organizing some of the activities in which the leadership, religious leadership from different schools of thought, they will be together and they will promote the message of respect for each other, ethics of disagreement, and our commitment that we have to take our society in accordance with the core values. Because even today, if we look into the opinions of the religious leadership of Pakistan, which includes the religious leader of all sects, they are believing and they are agreed upon the core values. The differences are on the interpretations, and these differences can very easily be addressed through the ethics of disagreement. So I think the religious leadership is moving towards that, but this movement needed to be inculcated in the curricula. For example, if the school children in early classes, they are dividing themselves on the basis of Shia or Sunni, how it would be possible for us to unite the nation. And another thing that we are working for it, that the mosques, either it is belonging to any sect, these should be open for all Muslims. And the Muslims from other sects, they should be encouraged that they should go there, they should say their prayer in these mosques. So in this way, these should be centers to unite the nation and not to divide the nation.
Professor Anis, ethics of disagreement, the core values that we need to all agree on. When we look on Hazrat Imam Hussain, his victory after his sacrifice, his inspiring legacy, those core values over the generations, over the centuries have kind of diluted, not just here in Pakistan, but all over the Muslim world. And I would rather say that many of the Western countries have imbibed these values and have become better societies because they have taken those core values and those ethics of disagreement that Professor Ziaul Sahab talked about, that Hazrat Imam Hussain taught us. Have we as a Islamic community as the Muslim Ummah become so insensitive to what people like our Holy Prophet Huzur Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or Hazrat Imam Hussain taught us?
You see, again, the problem is we have confined certain religious concepts to specific domains. I mentioned earlier that Imam Sahib was very much concerned about this shift of political structure from Khilafat to a kind of monarchy, which means that ultimately there will be no room for shura. Adabul Ikhtilaf is a result of this Islamic principle given by the Quran. Shura means that you have an issue. On that issue, you want to bring a group of people who are well aware of its various dimensions, but none of them is aware of all dimensions. Therefore, each one should make his input and disagree on the other viewpoint till they develop a consensus. Therefore, the Quran says, وَشَاوِرْهُمْ فِي الْأَمْرِ فَإِذَا عَزَمْتَ فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ. This Azmul Umur, the ayah which makes very clear is, Azmul Umur is possible only when you have debated, discussed, deliberated, shouted on each other so many times, but ultimately cool down and agree this is what you should be doing. This is the meaning of Adab Ikhtilaf, that you develop institutional framework. Now tell me, do you have a home in Pakistan or in Afghanistan or in Malaysia where they ever sit together and discuss as family, what should we eat today? Where should we go for a vacation? Should we go and purchase a farm? Should we make a home somewhere? What should be the education career of X, Y or Z? If you do not have right from the family concept of shura, do you think by putting in Pakistan's constitution, parliament in parentheses means shura? You can have shura. You will have professional opposition, not shura. Right? What we have today in all countries, including the West, you mentioned about the West, West too does not have simply our values. No, they have polluted their values, mixed those values with their own culture.
All right.
Nevertheless, what you said carries some truth also, that normally a person educated in a Western university in America or anywhere else will have more patience in listening to views of the other person. While those who are our products of Pakistani universities, politicians or anyone, even on your TV screens, when you have 2 adults, 3 adults sitting as resource persons, they never have the patience to allow other person to complete. Before the person has made his point, they pitch in and speak loudly and try to prevail, and till the anchor person ultimately intervenes, please, 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 then they cool down. This culture has to go. This means we have no tolerance, zero tolerance. And this tolerance has to come first from home, then from education institutions. How many teachers in their classroom have patience to listen to question of the student or even allow to raise a question? How many? I can count on fingers perhaps.
Exactly, that's a very small amount.
And consequently, those students you produce, they will have same character. When they become a district commissioner or become a Supreme Court Chief Justice or become whatever, they will never listen to others.
Where does this dilution of principles emanate from?
From home, from education institution and from the culture. We have distorted our culture. Our culture was not what is known as Indian culture today. We were never Indians. We were from day one Muslims. It was Islamic culture in India, not Indian Muslim culture. Unfortunately, the spread of Western ideas in our society during the period of colonization continues. We are not yet decolonized. We speak English, we think in English, we dress like English, we do everything. Unless we come out of that, we cannot call ourselves liberated.
But Professor Saab, isn't that just the case of a country like ours? It's the case of so many other countries as well. Have we forgotten those core values? Have we forgotten those sacrifices that leaders such as Hazrat Imam Hussain fought for?
You see, it is very natural if Muslims all over the world take the Quran as a piece of literature, very respectful, to be perfumed and put in a velvet cover and kept in a place but never read, then from where we will have values? Our core values come from the Quran, from Sirah. And if these two sources are not introduced to students, in family, in society, in media, we have a 5% or 2.5% time for religious talks, where we look for a quota system. The speaker must be from this sect, others should be from another sect, third from third sect.
All right.
And then we say, Alhamdulillah, Islam is okay. No, Islam cannot be okay like that. Islam means core values in the Quran and Sunnah, which are values of every human being actually.
Exactly.
And those should be
That is why
elaborated.
That is why, Professor Saab, so many people embraced Islam at a certain period of time, because they were enchanted by these core values that Islam
Let me give
taught.
you a concrete example. A Hindu scholar, I liked him very much, read him all my life. He became Muslim, and he said that one of the reasons was when I read that the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to clean his teeth and didn't use miswak so frequently. I thought a religion which is so concerned about such small thing has to be true religion. And that led him to think that he should become a Muslim. He was a Hindu, but became a Muslim. His name was Malik Ram.
All right, that's good. Finally, Professor Zia-ul-Haq Saab, you've worked so much on bringing the societies together, bringing different sects together. Peham-e-Pakistan is one step in that direction. But going back so many centuries, Hazrat Imam Hussain, through his sacrifice, through his fight against injustice, through his fight for social equality, also taught us that. We somehow, somewhere along the centuries forgot that, but we are trying to understand that more and more. How optimistic should we be as Muslims in this day and age under the guidance of the proper philosophers or religious scholars like yourself, like Professor Anis Saab, to become better human beings, to become better Muslims, and to imbibe those core values that people like Hazrat Imam Hussain stood for?
The methodology and strategy for optimistic future is suggested by Allama Muhammad Iqbal. He is suggesting that we should look to future through the past. We should learn past to devise strategies for the future.
Fine.
This is the key of success, and this is the key that has been used by other civilizations too. They critically evaluated their past, they identified their mistakes, and they decided that we will not repeat these mistakes. Unfortunately, we Muslims, even still today, we are repeating the same mistakes that we were used to create during the historical events.
All right.
So we need, particularly from this sacrification of Imam Hussain, is that we should learn. There were certain reasons for that. Why it happened? Was it not possible to avoid? Okay, it happened. Now it is a part of history. Now from this history, can we control the damage that has to Muslims, and this damage is continued because of the sectarian division that emerged from that historical event? We can move forward and our future can be optimistic if we learn from the mistakes of the past.
All right. That is very important, I think, to learn from the mistakes of the past, and through efforts of people such as yourself, Professor Anis Saab, Ziaul Saab, and also those who we've talked to earlier in this transmission. It's very important for people to have that understanding, that cognizance, that basic principles that people like Hazrat Imam Hussain taught us through his sacrifice, through that ultimate sacrifice, I might say, of him and his family, is that we need to become better humans, we need to become better Muslims, not just for ourselves, but for people around us, for our nation, for our society, and that is how we'll stand up as a better civilization and be reminiscent of that brilliant, beautiful era that was, of course, shown by the times of Hazrat Imam Hussain. This brings us to the end of this transmission on the 10th of Muharram, that is Ashura. With the sacrifice, Hazrat Imam Hussain Raziyallahu Ta'ala Anhu has provided us that platform which can unite us against all the evils of the society, against all the Yazids of the time, because this tragedy reminds us of the evil only succeeds when the good remains silent. Don't remain silent, understand, imbibe, and be a better human being. Allah Hafiz.
Ay Karbala, ay Karbala, ay Karbala, ay Karbala.
क्या सिर्फ मुसलमान के प्यारे हैं हुसैन, चरखे नौए बशर के तारे हैं हुसैन। इंसान को बेदार तो हो लेने दो, हर कौम पुकारेगी हमारे हैं हुसैन।